So today I'm talking with the best co-working space designer in Lewisham ever, and that is our friend Dean. We talk about the origin of co-working, and I'm sure you all know that Bernie invented co-working, but that's what we get into in the show. So there's the past, present and future. There's Bernard de Koven talked about how we can work in projects and working together, and Dean gives his take on that. And then the present, and then we get to what do we do with the future of work? That endless LinkedIn conversation. So we go around the houses a little bit here, but it is really interesting. And the thing I want to get your attention to is the whole do your work. So you may know Dean as the guy that designs furniture and co-working spaces, but also he's on Substack talking about doing the work, and he is working out loud. And I really love people that make things and document the process, emotionally and philosophically. One last thing before we get into the show is the Unreasonable Connection event is at the end of February, live and in person. There's 150 seats available, and there's 150 seats because that's Dunbar's magic number for community. That's the only reason, actually. Co-working community builders who own a co-working space, run a co-working space, you have something to do with a co-working space. We'll spend all day working with each other, talking with each other, collaborating. There'll be no speakers. There'll be no sages on the stages. It will be face-to-face contact sport stuff about community building, how to do your work better, sharing tips and ideas to further your projects around co-working. That's enough for me. Let's get to Dean. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Co-working Values podcast. Dean, what are you known for and what are you known for? What would you like to be known for? Sorry.
For doing the work. I think our intro to this conversation, referencing Stephen Pressfield's work that I haven't actually come across, but something that through my own journey, I've come to incorporate as part of my own ideology, which is to do the work. So that's the only thing that I would like to be known for, not for designing co-working spaces, just that I was able to show up each day to do the work that inspires me the most. And I think that's all I can kind of hope for, really. So I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy that you're here too. There's so much to talk about. Folks, any of you that podcast, you know that quite often you end up talking before the podcast and you have this amazing conversation and then we forgot we were not recording. So I want to kick off with this, Dean, is that whole, absolutely exhausting LinkedIn future of work talk. I don't think I can have another what is the future of work talk, but, in all your, 12 years in the co-working industry and studying design and getting really creative, because you have this I make furniture, I design co-working spaces, and you have your Substack on your YouTube, and then it's just Stephen Pressfield type quest of creating. What is the future of work? Please save us.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. And I've again, if we go back to the ideology of doing the work, I don't think it matters what the future of work is. I think a lot of people, especially in the LinkedIn world, are spinning their plates. And I can genuinely, I've done some meditating on this and done some thought, really I've done the work on this in my own mind. And not that anyone is really kind of tracking, but I haven't been as, if you like, consistent with my, 3 posts a week on LinkedIn and kind of, with my call to action at the end and engaging people to do something and to buy my service, etc. I haven't been that active on that. And it stems from this kind of realization that performing in order to engage people to then sell your services, for me, is exhausting. And I also think it's got a short expiration date on it. I think you burn out. And what I find is a lot of the content, the future of work content creators, if you like, a lot of them are creating from frameworks, or they're creating from data, they're creating from McKinsey style think tanks. They're kind of taking that information, repurposing it. They're going to conferences and repurposing it. And all of that's kind of fine. I think it's, in a broad sense, it's additive to the overall ecosystem. But in terms of like how I've been navigating the content world as it relates to co-working and the future of work, I've realized that a lot of the people, and this is my opinion, I could be wrong, so correct me, people, if you're out there. A lot of people, to me, are don't necessarily have the proof of building work spaces or environments where people congregate for work, and a lot of it's kind of theoretical. And something I said to you before we start recording, what's dawned on me, and it all ties into the ideology of doing the work, that the reason why I got into co-working, or sorry, I should say, the reason why I'm passionate about co-working now and workspace design now broadly, is not just because it's a skill set and I charge fees for my services. It's more, I actually have done the work. I've built it. I've done countless spaces, tried loads of different things, and I worked in a organization where I wasn't working as an outside consultant. And what I mean by that is, now what you have with workspace design, you have a lot of outside consultants advising clients on what workspace is. Whereas the unique positioning that I've had over my career is I worked in-house mainly. So I worked for the business that was actually delivering the product to the end user. So it was a lot more connected, my experience around the business strategy, look and feel, the design, and the user experience. And so that's given me this kind of 360 view of what I think work is. But to close this opening thought, it really comes back to the point that I've done the work, I have the proof, and so therefore it gives me the confidence to continually talk and engage in this ecosystem. And I'm pivoting away from trying to tell people what the future is, and more engaging people in a sense of saying, hey, if we do these things today, we can potentially create the future through the act of doing the work. That makes any sense whatsoever.
That did. No, I was like, I'm there all the way. It's like, we were talking about the 750 words thing. And this is my question next, is like, was there at one point I passed like 1 million words in 750 words. And I remember at university, it would take me a week to write 250 words we had to hand in position papers every week. And they might as well have said it's 250 million words. And now I just like do that every day. And at one point, I'd love to say I remember sitting in this cafe, and it had dawned on me. But at some point I thought, why do I make such a big deal of this every day? Bang, let's go. And was there a point when you sort of felt this inner bolt of, I know, like what film is it when he goes, I know in the Matrix, he goes, I know Kung Fu, like I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I was going to answer the question the same way again, but you can just answer it now. Sorry.
So your question was there a moment where it kind of like dawned on me to write? Is that the question?
No, it was like, when did you realize you knew what you were doing? Because there's all this time you spent designing spaces, and as like there's a big difference between like, I know what it's like to work in a restaurant and I know what it's like to run a co-working space. And then when I get to a certain type of co-working space, I have to say to them, like, because for your point, I know how to make cheeseburgers, but I've never made foie gras, just to be clear. And, when you realize that I know what I'm doing in this environment because I have so much experience, it's caught up with me.
Yeah, I think the main thing around that is like, how did I know? I think like a lot of industries and a lot of like, if you like, adjacent disciplines, the skills are transferable. So it's like, I know, like you said, I know cheeseburgers, I know how to make cheeseburgers, but if you do that enough, and if you do that at a high enough level, I believe there will be, and the foodies out there will correct this analogy, but I believe there will be some transferable skills in order for you to make foie gras. And so for me, I think about like all of the skills that I've accumulated developing co-working and developing products. And when I say developing co-working, it's more iterating. It's more like saying, okay, I did this space and we organized it in this way to serve these members in this particular way, and that didn't work. But because we had, at the time, at the height of a lot of my work, we had a lot of opportunity to do more. So you could correct or you could refine your way of thinking about things. And so I get to the point now where I still don't know in terms of what the future may be, but the breadcrumbs that I've kind of created or left over the years gives me enough confidence that I'll be able to kind of transfer the skills into a future endeavor.
There's the do you remember we were talking before we came on about like there was no map, and everyone asks for like, I want it to be like that, and like that was like 2014, mate. It's things have moved on, because if you want, because people still ask that, and so what was cutting edge in 2014 is like mainstream now, and it's already been done. So you need to get to the next thing, which is that doing the work thing you're talking about. It's like, what is next? But like, what is, I'm not asking what is next, but like, how many times can you like redesign a workspace? Like his desks and chairs and sofas.
Exactly. I one of my, my sayings is beautiful design is table stakes. And to your point, the creation or recreation of workspaces today is reached a level of maturity from a product standpoint where everyone kind of understands what a workspace is. And that's helped by the fact that, as I said, a lot more consultants now are pitching to this subsection of sector of the market. So you've got a lot of landlords who are creating diverse, flexible spaces. They're building campuses. They're doing great work, to be honest, because the building owners are waking up to the fact that they've got ecosystems that they can develop, and it includes retail. It probably includes some residential as well as kind of commercial. And I think that's great. And I think what's happened is those real estate professionals are tapping traditional consulting firms to help develop those products. But what you end up with is that you end up a little bit with kind of beautiful design slop. And I don't know if that makes it's more, it's like AI slop, but it's kind of the design version of it where it's all great. It's beautiful design, the finishes, but as far as the inherent product itself, the inherent product isn't really evolved. Now, the only, in my experience, because like I said, I fell into co-working, not so much like, I didn't like tap it up. I didn't kind of hear about it and then kind of pursue WeWork, for example. I was, I came across this founder and it was cool. It was in New York. I wanted to move to New York. So I was like, all right, I'll do it. No problem. And then it was the process. Again, the doing the work was the process that built the confidence, which then built the proof, which then built the enthusiasm. And so here I am now. And like you said, how many times can you design desks and chairs? And you mentioned the word map before and frameworks. For me, what I've kind of come to realize is that there is no framework for creating something new. If I've learned anything over the time, I learned that, and it probably sounds super redundant, is you just have to walk the walk. You have to go through the process. And once you go through that process of figuring it out for yourself, meaning, so for example, let's say, I don't know, I'm just making this up off the cuff. I was making a co-working space for veterinarians so there's a combination of a place where animals you can bring your animal and you can then get the animal seen to, like a kind of doctor vet relationship. I don't quite know how that would work, but conceptually in my head, I can think this through. There's a co-working element to it already, but the hook, the reason for being is it's a space for vets and for people who have a passion for animals or a particular type of animal, depending on how it's organized. Now, there's no framework that I can then give to a the vet or whoever the founder of that business would be, to then say, do it like I did it at WeWork. And as a consultant, someone who sells his services, I've had to wrestle with that I have this belief that you have to just walk the walk. So then what's the point of me? And so I realized actually the value proposition in this idea that I talk about, where I say, do the work or go through the process, the value proposition that I can bring to that particular business is saying, if I can codify the proof, I can codify the steps that I took on the way to create these products and show examples of when we did certain things, we put certain rooms without natural light and it meant this, or so on and so forth, different ideas. I can show that proof and say to them, this is how it ended. There was the result of that proof. And then they can kind of walk their path accordingly. And they can say, well, Dean, I think that could work for me. That couldn't work for me based on this hook or this niche that I'm involved in. And, but so it's twofold. So there's a value proposition where I can kind of tell them the story of the path that I took, which is authentic, real, and it's based on proof. And then through that and codifying that in such a way, or curating that in such a way where it enables them to take the Band-Aid off, if I say it like an American, and walk the path themselves. And then if I'm on the journey with them, there's value for me, and then there's value for them to help them walk along that path to open their particular space. Hopefully that example made sense.
Let me just check. I read that as there's codifying it, but like it's the questions you ask. Because if you what you need is this and this and this and this, tick this, or there's, in that room with the light is like, how do you see this light happening? And I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but very often people think they want this. And then when you ask them questions, they actually want this. I want, like something in my part of it, it's like, I want more members. And how do you want to do that? We need a website. And then it's like, what do you want your website to do? Get me more members. How do you want it to do that? I mean, I don't make websites, just to be clear. I don't want to rush of orders for websites. I don't like them. But when people arrive, how they're going to get in the building or get on the website, what's the journey they're going to go on? So few people, and I've been in this situation as well. So few people know what they wanted to do. When they get co-working space software, I wanted to do this, but how do you want it to do that? Like you got to walk the thing. I want to ask you, because we've run out of time. I want to flip that. What, this whole thing about what can we learn from the history of our industry and co-working, and to get us into where we are now? That's always really interesting to me.
Yeah, no, I'm fascinated by that same question. I think it goes, one of the clues, because as I said, we don't really know the future. None of us can predict the future. And so it's a fool's game, really, trying to predict the future, especially with the way technology kind of moves so fast. So for me, it's quite comforting to look at the past and using the breadcrumbs that have been laid. I mentioned that earlier, to help form a picture of where we want to go. And then you have to walk the walk. That's how it works. And so, like one of my ideas is centered around looking at co-working's history and where it's come from, like how the term is used today and where did the term originate from, and kind of thinking through that to see if there's any clues that could help us create the next generation of spaces. And again, just to caution everyone, it's not thinking that the next generation is this. To me, this is the path that we have to walk along, and then the next generation will materialize through doing that work. So for me, it goes back to this idea of where co-working came from. And if we spoke about this a lot, Bernard de Koven, for those who don't know who he is, he was an American game designer, and he coined the phrase co-working in 1999, I think it is.
Yeah.
And again, I'm paraphrasing, and you can do your own research and kind of you'll come to understand what I'm saying here is his essence of what he came to understand about people and work was that you would have at the center, and I'm going to simplify it here, you would have at the center, you would have, say, a project or a task. And his idea of co-working was people working together as equals. So if you can visualize a project or a task that you may have, and then you might need 10 people to work on that project or task, his view was that those people would, say, congregate around the table in a non-hierarchical way, breaking down kind of corporate structures, and everyone will be working together as equals to solve the particular problem or develop the project or the task, right? So everyone was equal in his eyes. And that was the origin of the term co-working. So in essence, co-working is a method of working, right? Does that make sense to you?
I'm there. I'm sold already.
Right. And again, I'm not saying this to kind of critique how the word is developed or how people see it or whatever. And again, people can do their own research, but when you break it down, it was breaking down hierarchies and corporate structures. And so the focus was that shared particular project, and everyone was equal around it. So it's a method of working. It's a work style, right? And so then that's kind of 1.0. And then you have 2.0, which is the version of co-working it's kind of where we are now, that most people are familiar with, which a lot of people go back to, I think it's Brad Newberg in 2005, who created a version of a co-working space in San Francisco. But there are some people out there who argue that they probably did it before that. And that's probably true. But you know how the internet is, it kind of records history for a particular set. So
with a bias towards San Francisco.
Yeah. Well, I didn't actually think about it like that, but yeah, maybe. But let's just go with it anyway. So that 2005 version of co-working was developed around. So if you remember, that center point that I was talking about was the project. It was a task. It was a particular problem. In this case, in this generation 2.0, it was the work was at the center. So the abstract idea of work. So in your case, Bernie, it's whatever work you do, writing or whatever. In my case, it's designing. In a banker's case, it's, finance and so on throughout the economy. And then you have, brands such as, WeWork and others. And as I said, most of the operators today coalesce around this idea that company A, company B, company C, company D, and so on join this shared environment. But each business works independently in the shared environment. And so most operators today are competing on price, location, and the quality of the space. And it works, right? But the focus, and just want to be really clear, the focus is shifted from the project, the problem, or a task, and it's now shifted to work as an abstract idea. Now, so for me, if I apply, and I won't, go into this a lot of detail, but if you start to question what work is in the context of a digital economy, and you start to explore knowledge working and where that term came from, and spoiler alert, knowledge workers are just people like myself or yourself that use our brains and our formal training to produce products and services. So we are quote unquote a knowledge worker. In a world where we can work anywhere, I think, the data is, and someone can correct me on this, but in the US in particular, it's like 50% of the economy is service-based. So it's hugely driven by knowledge workers. And these are people, again, who are not using their hands, physical labor to produce physical products and value. So for me, in the context where AI is on a tear, if you like, how can we combine those two generations of co-working to create a third generation? And again, in just to tie a bow around everything we've been saying, you still have to walk the walk. And then through that process of walking the walk, it might evolve and change to something completely different to what I'm about to say. But for me, I think my proposal for 3.0 is this: taking that centerpiece, which originally was the project, the task, the problem, then it migrated to an abstract concept of work generally. I believe that centerpiece needs to shift to this concept of what I call a hook. So I kind of laid a breadcrumb before where I gave the example of the vet co-working space, the veterinarian's co-working space. That becomes the hook. And it's a specific experience that unifies the community. So it's people who love dogs, or it's veterinarians. It's a space where they can go and train, or whatever the case may be. And it could be coffee, it could be sports, it could be music, it could be wellness, it could be childcare. And we've come across founders who are doing things in these kind of worlds. And I think it's interesting, and it's definitely something that I think is a path that I would like to walk going forward. And it's something beyond, we have desks and super fast Wi-Fi, come and sign up to our co-working. So it's a new center of gravity. And the main driver is to say people want in real life experiences, especially the younger generations. They're all on their phones, but now they're craving more physical experiences. And so if you can develop that product or that hook in the center, now becomes the main way you can bring people back together. So if we go back to the original vision, which is working together as equals. So for me, just working together, and then you can just kind of strip away the working part, because work is becoming more and more abstract. It's really just about people being together. And so for me, it kind of creates this freedom of expression now for everyone to go and explore. And that's what fascinates me.
Now, as you were saying that, I was thinking the episode we did with Xavier in Brussels at the Commons Hub, he's thinking about how to have a co-working space and do something different, or do something relevant, not different, do something relevant. And instead of saying like, this is, a monthly fee is this is Monday's crypto day, Tuesday is when all the people who are into food come in, and Wednesday is for, game designers. So instead of like coming, because not many people go into an office or a co-working space 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And like when he said it, I was like, that's so obvious, but it is. And that's how meetup.com came around. It's like, find your people on the internet, it's not a new idea. So
I love that, by the way.
What?
That everything you've just said, it ties into my thesis. When I developed Old Sessions House, that was my thinking. It was, you have these spaces, and because work is no longer this 9 to 5 requirement, you can program the space in such a way where it can accommodate different hooks or different, I used to say it would suggest the utility. So you go into a particular environment and it will suggest how you could use it. And that is the path that we should try and walk as a way to kind of evolve this ecosystem.
Just before we go, Dean, because I can feel another podcast coming on already, where can people find you online? We can put all the links in the show notes, but shout out the best place to connect with you.
So my main social media handle is I-AM.D Connell. Super straightforward. I-AM.D Connell. Nice to meet everyone. And I think I would point people mostly to the creative work that I'm doing for my newsletter. So I-AM.D Connell, and you can find that on Substack. And I produce a weekly newsletter. It's called Work in Progress. And it's mainly around this idea that doing the work is the most important work that we can do as we enter into the AI digital simulation.
We've entered it. We're there already. It's not like it's not coming. It's here.
Right. So for me, creatively doing the work and showing up as a whole authentic human being is the best work that one can do. And so I'm doing that, and that's my work in progress weekly newsletter. Please come and join it. Sign up. I am Dean Connell.
Great. Okay. Say goodbye, Dean.
So thank you very much, Bunny. It's always a pleasure to talk. We both share this passion of this topic, the historical context around it, and talking about like how we can think through the future that neither of us know. So it's almost endless because it's like we don't know what the future holds. So it means that we can keep showing up again.
Live long and prosper. And there goes Dean. So thanks very much for your time and attention today, folks. All the links are in the show notes. If you go to the Co-working Values podcast page on Substack, in the top bar, there's the monthly online meetup, which is our Unreasonable Connection event. You're always welcome to join that if you're a co-working community builder. Even though it's the end of November as we're recording this, I want to get you European folks in. European Co-working Day is coming in May, and it's not just about let's have another day. If we start talking about it now and connect with each other and connect our communities and really think about how we're going to get people into our co-working spaces to experience the magic of co-working in May, that's a conversation I'm encouraging you all to start now. Every year, like Christmas in shopping centres, we start it earlier and earlier and earlier. So if you just got back from Co-working Europe, you would have seen Claudius talking about it there. And there is the LinkedIn co-working group getting there. It's getting a little better in there, but more of you like showing your work, talking about doing the work like we talked about in this podcast with Dean would be amazing. And don't forget, if you can be in London at the end of February, join our waitlist, our co-creation waitlist for the Unreasonable Connection going live. And wherever you are in the world, be careful out there. It is a jungle.